Let me explain how to multiply a whole number with decimals in a clear, step-by-step way. First, the key rule. When multiplying with decimals, temporarily ignore the decimal point. Just multiply the numbers as if they were whole numbers. Then count the total number of decimal places in the original numbers and put that many decimal places in your answer. Let's work through an example. 6 times 3.45. Step 1. Ignore the decimal point in 3.45. Think of it as 6 times 345. Step 2. Multiply normally. 6 times 345 equals 2,070. Step 3. Count decimal places in original numbers. 6 has 0 decimal places. 3.45 has 2 decimal places. So the total number of decimal places needed in the answer is 2. Step 4. Put the decimal point in your answer. Move 2 places from the right in 2070. And your final answer will be 20.70. Let's try another one. 8 multiplied by 1.2. Step 1, ignore the decimal. Think of it as 8 times 12. Next, multiply. 8 times 12 equals 96. Count the decimals. 1 decimal place in the original numbers in the question, and you go in 1 decimal place starting on the right to get an answer of 9.6. Now I'm going to share 3 estimation types: front-end estimation, decimal benchmarks, and compatible numbers. Let's do some examples with these types of estimation. In this first example, we will be multiplying a whole number by a decimal. But first, let's think of it using front-end estimation. It's helpful to estimate because then you can judge whether or not the actual answer you came up with would be reasonable. So in this case, in front-end estimation, if we had the number 3.45 multiplied by 6, what I would need to do, I would look closely at the number 3.45. Using front-end estimation, I would only use the first number, which would be 3. Every number after it would become a 0. So 3.45 would become simply 3 in my estimate. 6 is already a whole number, so I would simply multiply 3 times 6. Using front-end estimation, my estimate would be 18. Now, if I were to multiply 3.45 by 6 to determine what the actual answer is, I'm able to compare. Is it a reasonable estimate? And let's work it out. Here, I would start off by multiplying the 6 by the 5, which would be 30. I would put my 0 down in my answer, and I would regroup the 3. Following that, I would multiply the 6 by 4. 6 times 4 is 24. Then I need to add in the 3 that I regrouped. 24 plus 3 equals 27. That means I would put the 7 down in my answer and regroup the 2. 6 times 3 is 18. I need to remember to add in the 2 that I regrouped. 18 plus 2 equals 20. Now that I have finished multiplying, I have 2,070 as my answer. But I need to remember to add in the decimal. I know in the question there were 2 decimal places, so I need to include 2 decimal places in my answer. Starting at the right, moving in 2 decimal places, I will be left with an answer of 20.7. Now I am also able to compare the actual answer with my estimate that I had made using front-end estimation. My estimate was 18, and the actual answer is 20.7. It makes sense. It was a reasonable estimate for the question. Next, we're going to move on to another multiplication problem, but this time when we estimate, we are going to use decimal benchmarks. So here I have the question 6.79 multiplied by 8. Using decimal benchmarks, I know that if the number is 5 or greater, I'm going to round up. If the number is 4 or lower, I would round down to the original whole number. For the number 6.79, I want to round it to the nearest whole number using decimal benchmarks. So I would look at the number in the tenths position, which is a 7. That 7 is 5 or greater, so I could round the whole number 6 up to the number 7. Then I would be left with 7 times 8 to have an estimate of 56. Now I can check my estimate against the exact answer. To do that, I do need to multiply to find the exact product. I would start with 8 times 9, and I know that is 72. I put my 2 down in the answer, and I regroup the number 7. Then I multiply 8 times 7, which is 56. 56 plus 7, I know, is 63. The 3 will go down in my answer, and I will regroup the 6. Then I will multiply 6 times 8, which is 48, and I would add in the 6. 48 plus 6 equals 54. The product I have now is 5,432, but I must remember to add in my decimal. The number of places that the decimal goes in the question, I must put in the answer. In this case, it is also 2. So my final answer will become 54.32. And if I compare to my estimate, I'm pretty close, and it is a reasonable estimate for that product. Next, we're going to look at an estimate using compatible numbers. In this case, I start with the question 9.34 multiplied by 5. When I'm using compatible numbers, I want numbers that I can easily work with. In this case, 9.34, I am going to round to the number 10, which is a very easy number to work with. 10 multiplied by 5 is much easier for me to do than 9.34 multiplied by 5. So using those compatible numbers, I have an estimate of 50. Now time to find the exact. When I multiplied out the numbers, I had a final product of 46.70. And when I compare that to my estimate, I know it is reasonable. Now it's practice time. I have included a multiplication chart to help you out. Now, for this first problem, we are going to estimate using front-end estimation and also solve for the exact answer. If you want to take your time and work through this problem on your own, now would be the time to pause the video. Okay, if you have stayed with us or if you have pressed play again, we are going to solve this together and work it out. I'm going to start, of course, with estimating. Using front-end estimation. Remember, in front-end estimation, I keep the first number and everything else becomes a 0. So in this question with the number 7.643, I'm only keeping the first number, and that will be 7. 7 multiplied by 5 equals 35. That becomes my estimate. If you had it, great job. Next, we are going to work through this problem together. Of course, I start multiplying the 5 by the 3 to get 15. I put the 5 down in the answer and regroup the 1. Then I move to 5 times 4, which is 20. But remember to add in the 1 that I regrouped to have a total of 21. The 1 will go down in my answer and I will regroup the 2. Then I move on to multiplying 5 by 6, which is 30. Add in the number I regrouped will get me 32. The 2 will go down in my answer, and I will regroup the 3. Finally, I'm going to multiply 5 times 7 to get 35. Add in the 3 to get 38. In the question, it went in 3 decimal places, so I need to make sure I add in the decimal, 3 decimal places from the right. My total product was 38.215. Comparing that to my estimate, I know I have a reasonable answer. Next, are you ready for it? This says estimate using decimal benchmark estimation and solve for the exact answer. Once again, this is the time to pause the video to work it out on your own. Then you can unpause when you have had a chance to try it out. Okay, here we go. We're starting with the estimate, using decimal benchmarks. I wanted to round to the nearest whole number. I started with the number 8.370, and rounding it to the nearest whole number using decimal benchmarks, I have to look at the number in the tenths position. In this case, it's a 3. I know that if the number is 4 or below, I round down to the nearest whole number, which would be 8. If it had have happened to be 8.5, I would have rounded up to 9. But because it was the number 3, I rounded down to the whole number 8. So my estimate was 8 times 9 with a product of 72. When I solved the multiplication, I came up with a product of 75.330. And comparing that to my estimate, I know I have a reasonable estimate and product. Moving on to the next question. Here it says estimate using compatible numbers and solve for the exact answer. The question is 97.123 multiplied by 5. I know I need to estimate using compatible numbers first. So if you want to do that and try to also solve for the exact answer, pause the video now. All right, now we're going to go through and first start with compatible number estimation. I had the number 97.123. I know that I need to find a number that is very easy to work with, but that is not too far from 97.123. The compatible number estimation I have chosen is 100 multiplied by 5. It's much easier for me to work with those numbers very quickly. 100 times 5 equals 500. That is my estimate using compatible number estimation. Now I'm going to solve to find the exact product. And when I did that, I came up with 485.615. Notice in the question, it went in 3 decimal places, and I also needed to move it in 3 decimal places in my answer. If you had it, great job. I also am able to compare that my estimate and the exact product are reasonable. That's all for now. Till next time.